I'm going to read this one right here. This was linked to me, of course, by Began. Began thinks this one was great. Dan Sinker, The Who Cares Era. Earlier this week, it was discovered that the Chicago Sun-Times and the Philadelphia Inquirer had both published an externally produced special supplement that contained facts, experts, and book titles entirely made up by a chat or an AI chatbot. Nice. Dude, you don't need to do research, bro. They got PhD level intelligence. Why would they be incorrect, idiot? Been a lot written about this, and I don't need to rehash it all. But the thing that is most disheartening to me is how every step along the way, nobody cared. Okay, without reading the rest of the article, it's hard for me to say that no one cared when you have something that can produce so much content and so many things so fast. There's like this weird, and I've felt it. I've felt it even though I know better. I've been lulled into a sense of security about things that are produced. And that is somebody who is actively pretty skeptical of AI. So now imagine people who aren't skeptical of AI at all, right? They would of course automatically think these things are correct. You called it months ago. AI books have hit the market. Yeah, of course all these things are going to happen. None of it is surprising. Literally mainstream bot farm. Yeah. It's just made the world generally worse. The writer didn't care. The supplements editor didn't care. The biz people on both sides of the sale of the supplement didn't care. The production people didn't care. And the fact that it took 2 days for anyone to discover this epic fuck up in print means that ultimately the reader didn't care either. And there you go. There you have it. It's not just that the person who produced it's at fault. It's not just that the writer, the creator's at fault, the reader themselves, they're at fault too. We're all at fault. It's so emblematic of the moment we're in, the who cares era, where completely disposable things are shoddily produced for people to mostly ignore. Now, I'm actually going to go with an opposite take here. I don't think it's the who cares era in that context. I think we just live in a world where it's always about facts at every moment. Everything you read is always an expert telling you why it is. Or any of the, like, everything has some sort of like expert written thing. And for you to understand a topic now, it's not the days of old. Like, so there's this guy named Coolidge. And Coolidge was one of the people, I believe, one of the last people who knew everything. And what is meant by that is that he could study physics. He could study physics, which back then meant like the health side of things. He could study chemistry, biology, and history, and writing, and all the things, and he could actually get a degree in everything that is known under the sun. This wasn't that long ago. This was just a couple hundred years ago. And so you could actually be like, oh, I know literally everything that there is to know underneath the earth. I know all the thing. And so Coolidge was one of the last people, right? He was considered the, the last person to know everything. He was literally Mr. Wikipedia. But in our day and age, it's just like the information is so dense and so available that if you even, like, a great example of this is just post your workout, right? Just go ahead, post your workout. Go on there and say, I did these set of things. And people will be like, here's the 10 reasons why you're wrong. And then you'll have many versions of why you're wrong. And some of them will disagree with each other for why you're wrong. And then you'll have some people say, no, you're right. And then it just is like everything's effed up. So I think it's less about an era of being, or it's emblematic of an era of who cares, more that I think every last person is fact satiated. That it's extremely hard to just keep on being like, every time you want to learn or look at something, you just see a phrase and you're just like, yeah, sure, fine, I'll accept it. Just because it's so much easier than doing the opposite, which is to challenge and to try to figure out the opposite. Oversaturated, yeah. That's why I said fact satiated. That's at least my kind of viewpoint of this, is that it's just every time it's just like, okay, here we go. I'm gonna go start. I'm gonna try to figure this out. You're starting to sound like Sarah Jessica Parker. I'm not even sure what that means, but I'm pretty sure I'm offended. Or am I? Actually, is that a compliment? I don't even know now. Now I'm not even sure. All right. AI, of course, at the center of this moment. It's a mediocrity machine by default, attempting to bend everything it touches toward a mathematical average. Using extraordinary amounts of resources, it has the ability to create something good enough, a squint, and it looks right, a simulacrum of normality. Truing. Yeah. I mean, that's literally what AI does. AI, like, I mean, just it is the nipple of the bell curve producer. If you don't care, it's miraculous. If you do, the illusion falls apart pretty quickly. The fact that the user base for AI chatbots have exploded exponentially demonstrates that good enough is, in fact, good enough for most people, because most people don't care. It's true, though. I think that a lot of people are fine with good enough. I have this problem where it just depends on what good enough is. And what I mean by that is that good enough, when it comes to, say, admin.html, this thing that I let auto-generated by AI, I don't care. Like, right? Like, dude, this is a crazy file. I would never write code this way. But at the exact same time, I also don't have to write this, and it's not something I want to write or something that I think is going to be fantastic. So I'm just like, hey, this is good enough. I don't need it. I don't need it to be fantastic. I just need it to work because I just need some small amount of information out about the current state of my server, and that is it. There's nothing else I want or need. The end. It's worth pointing out that I'm not full-throated hater and know people, coders mostly, who work with AI that do care and have used it to make real meaningful things. Most people, however, use it quickly and thoughtlessly to make more mediocrity. It's easy to blame this all on AI, but it's not just that. Last year, I was deep in negotiations with a big-budget podcast production company. We started talking about making a deeply reported, limited-run show about the concept of living in a multiverse that I was and still am very excited about. But over time, our discussions kept getting dumbed down until finally the show wasn't about the multiverse at all, but instead had transformed into a daily chat about the internet, which everyone was trying to make back then. Discussions fell apart. Dude, daily chat about the internet. Let's go. We got internet. We got internet talk. Dude, internet, man. Crazy, huh? TCP bros. HTTP is like, wow. Looking back, it feels a little microcosm of everything right now. Over the course of 2 months, we went from something smart that would demand a listener's attention in a way that was challenging and new to something that sounded like every other thing. Some dude talking to some other dude about apps that some third dude would half listen to at 2x speed while texting a fourth dude about plans for later. Dude, if you're watching this right now on YouTube, if this comment was you, please tell me about how much bandwidth you think a truck-sized USB, how much bandwidth could they do? How many gigabytes a second do you think we got here? Okay. I want to know, what is the math for gigabytes per second on truck USB? Okay. Hanaf Abdurraqib, I can't say, sorry, saying names. Struggle. In one of his excellent Instagram mini essays the other week, wrote about the rise of content that's designed to be consumed while doing something else. In Hanif's case, he was writing about Time Machine, his incredible 90-minute deep dive into Fungi's seminal album, The Score, released in 2021. Hanif marveled at the budget, time, and effort it went into crafting the 2-part 90-minute podcast and how today there's no way it would have happened. He's right. Nobody funding that kind of work right now because nobody cares. It's worth pointing out that Hanif wrote this using stories, a system that erased in 24 hours later. Another victim of the who cares era. Of course, we are all victims of the biggest perpetrator of this uncaring era, as Trump administration declares who cares, to vast swaths of federal government, to public health and immigrant families, to college students, to you, to me, as Elon Musk Doge rats gnaw their way through the federal agencies, not caring as their guiding light. By the way, I don't really engage in politics, so I'm just not going to we're not going to dive into the who cares era when it comes to this. They cut indiscriminately, a smug grin on their face. They believe they can replace government workers, people who care an extraordinary amount about their arcane corner of the bureaucracy with hastily written AI code is another defining characteristic right now. So normally I don't talk about politics, but I am going to say one thing though. You can say whatever you want. I don't care what any of your opinions are up until this point, but government workers caring extraordinarily about their little corner. I guess I personally haven't ran into that situation, okay? Every time I meet a government person, they're like, I hear you. Like, the rest of this, you can say what you want to say about that. I'm not going to argue for or against any of that. But this last part, I don't know about this great care business. Dude, that's crazy. Also, Assuming even bad actors, people that don't care, assuming you can replace them with hastily written AI code is insane also, right? Like that's also crazy. We can recognize both things at the exact same time. I keep coming back to this word disheartening because it all really is. I mean, okay, excluding some of these things that people will feel very, very intense about, the rest of this, I don't think this is disheartening. I think we're just in a new world. Like, here's the problem. Like in my point of view, we are a dopamine produced group of people now. Like every part of our life is dopamine inducing and all that. So yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that it's really sad that we no longer have the radio star that could describe events and talk about it, that people would sit and listen, right? Video killed that. Completely ruined a lot of the radio stars. Like, should we be sad about that? What about general writing skills? Writing skills have gone way down comparatively to our ability and our knowledge that's distributed throughout our society. We have one of the most literate group of people ever, but some of the worst writers ever. So, is this bad? Is this good? Is it disheartening? I don't know. I really don't know, because we now live in just such a different world. It's hard for me to call it disheartening, right? But I will say, from a personal viewpoint, I really like being good at what I do. In fact, it's very, very, very upsetting knowing that people don't care about code. And I can understand the disheartening thing. So if I were to relate it to something I guess I'm really in connection with, it does make me sad or disheartened that people don't care about being good at stuff. But I would also argue that for all of humanity, caring about stuff in a deep sense has never really been a thing, right? Like people have cared about like making sure that they do enough work that things work. But you got to remember, like during the time of chattel slavery in America, the South had, 97% of all the cows and produced 2% of the nation's cheese and milk products. It was so underkept and so utilized, it was ridiculous. So people didn't care back then about their own stuff. They had access to some of the most stuff. It's an insane stat. Yeah, it's a super insane stat. But it's one of those things where it's just like the lack of care was crazy. In the U.S., 40% of students are below basic reading levels. Yeah, I know. I think that's terrible. I'm not saying that this is a good thing, but I don't. But we still live in one of the most literate worlds of all time. You must understand that this is like right now in the world, the amount of people who can read is unfathomable compared to just 50 years ago, to 100 years ago, 200 years ago, right? Like it is, we do live in a very literate world. Whether, reading does not equal comprehend. Yeah, the good old days. Like I don't romanticize the good old days. I don't think that the good old days are a great thing. Peak literacy was pre-GPT. Potentially. I would probably agree. Reading does not equal comprehension, of course, but that still doesn't mean you can't read. I'm not saying comprehension. I'm saying literacy. The ability to read, right? People can read. They're just being dumb. Yes, I agree with that. I am totally on the agree with that. All right. Without getting into too many specifics, I recently was involved in reviewing hundreds of applications for something. Nice. Over the course of reviewing, I was struck by the nearly identical phrasing that threaded throughout dozens of applications. It was eerie at first, like seeing a shadow in the distance, then frustrating and ultimately completely disheartening. It was AI. For whatever their reasons, a bunch of people had used a chatbot to help write their answers to questions that asked them to draw from their own unique personal experience. They had fed their resumes or their personal websites or their actual stories and experiences into a machine and had it filled in the blanks, Mad Lib style. I felt crushed. I mean, in some sense, I don't see how you can feel crushed by this, and the reason being is that, unfortunately, people, much like electricity, always takes the path of least resistance. Kirchhoff was right, and he was just right about more things than he realized. And so, if you can more quickly and more easily have something work for you and do stuff and effectively get it correct, whatever correct means, then I am not surprised people do this. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying it's not surprising. Like in fact, I would be shocked that if you're reviewing applications right now, for you to think that you're reading anything but a bunch of AI spewing nonsense. I feel like you would read every now and then you might read one application that's not AI'd, and then you're like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever. Until I read an application written entirely by look at this. Let's go. Nailed it. And then another, and then another. They glowed with delight and joy and sadness and with unexpected at every turn. They were human. They were written by people that cared. In the who cares era, the most radical thing you can do is care. Interesting. In the moment where machines churn out mediocrity, make something yourself. Make it imperfect, make it rough, just make it. I do like this because I like craft. I think craft very good. Ultimately, I think those who take the time to learn their craft and to be really good at it will be the people that will be most happy over the course of the next 20 years. Because I think that the next 20 years is going to be this weird place where we live in that's going to be AI is not quite good enough to do anything, but it's just good enough that you can give the illusion of doing things, and you're just going to find yourself continuously struggling against it versus the person that actually has expertise, that actually feels like they're building stuff and feel. I also think, like, honestly, I think you feel more fulfilled when you build it yourself. I think there's just something about building with your hands and with your eyes than there is about having something auto-generated. Like, I don't feel great when I have something just auto-generated. Like, I don't feel like I don't get nearly the same satisfaction. I just feel like, okay, yeah, I guess I'm completing it. I'm just checking a box. The end. There's almost like something that's kind of like, it's almost the opposite. It almost feels disheartening. I almost feel like more exhausted when I move really fast with AI. It kind of feels gross. It just feels like there's just this overwhelming, like how I look at it, at least right now, is the more I allow something to take control of what I'm doing, is that there's a part of the program that I get that I'm working on that's mine. And then there's a huge part of the program that's just this growing black ball that I don't know what's inside of it. I know it's working, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it makes me feel really, really uncomfortable knowing that at some point I'm going to have to, sorry, I wanted to make a spider, right? It's kind of like a spider. And that at some point I'm going to have to learn these things. And it's like, I know it's going to be frustration. So I just have this huge hesitation going beyond these lines, because I know that once I go beyond this line, I can't just make a little change right here. Just due to the fact of how it's written, I'm going to have to change the whole ass spider. And that's like super frustrating. It's super frustrating knowing that it exists, and that's how I'm going to have to live. And so instead, I just try to avoid it. And it's just like, I feel like a growing sense of frustration often whenever I work on stuff. And I don't know how else to explain it. Like even, what's it called? Even the little chessy thing that I'm building, the admin panel is just purely, this is all generated code. But I tell it, but I do something, which is that I say, do not touch the Go code. Just call the endpoint with this data. I will take care of the other side. I don't want you touching the other side. And so it at least does this side for me, and I do the other side, which makes me at least feel somewhat more in control. It helps me capture part of the spider, if that makes sense. I have some level of capturing a part of the spider. In a moment where machines churn out mediocrity, make something yourself. Make it imperfect, make it rough, just make it. At a time where the government's uncaring boot is pressing down on all of our necks, the best way to fight back is to care. Care loudly, tell others, get going. As a culture of who care era grinds toward the lowest common denominator, support those that are making real things. Listen to something with your full attention. Watch something with your phone in the other room. Read an actual paper, magazine, or a book. Be yourself, be imperfect, be human, care. Yeah, this is very, like, wistful. Yeah. In some sense, I do care. It's okay to be imperfect, but, there's this weird thing that happens. We live in a very weird world. What's really weird? What's being very countercultural in our day and age? Like getting married and having kids young. I recently was at a place and there's like this 22-year-old and this 23-year-old, and they're like, yeah, we're trying to have kids. And I cannot tell you how many people were like, you're having kids that young? And I'm like, man, these people are rebels. Look at this rebel go. Look at this person just trying to like fight against, dude. I mean, these guys are pretty much like the 60s all over again, like having kids in their early 20s, so rebellious, so traditional. And I thought it was just so funny. And it's just like, there's this weird world where I think we live in where And you can kind of read it throughout this as well, which is what is the focus of a lot of this stuff? A lot of the focus here is on yourself, and I'm not convinced just being focused on yourself is a good way to live. I think that often you will end up being more sad if your focus is you. I'm not sure if maybe I'm overreading on these things, but whenever I read these type of statements like this, is that's kind of what I take from it, is that there's this like that the center of the universe is yourself, and this is the thing you should be pursuing. And I'm not quite convinced at that. But at the exact same time, look at me. I'm streaming on Twitch, talking to a bunch of degenerates, reading articles. So, am I throwing stones from a glass house? It's kind of ridiculous, right? Wait until your own daughter in her mid-20s tell you she's quitting her job to get some kids. Dude, I'd be so proud of her. I would high five my daughter if she did that. Dude, I'd be stoked. Like, why would I be upset in the remotest part? Dude, I would be stoked if my daughter decided to be a base trad wife. I'd be like, go get him, girl. And if she decided to just work throughout her 20s and her 30s, I'd still support her. I'd be a little bit sad because I know that there tends to be a much higher correlation of unhappy life that way. But I would totally be down. It's her choice. It's her life. I can't make her do anything when she's that age. I got to be the one that, I just got to cheer her on. I just hope for grandkids. Dude, I'm like not even 40 yet, and I'm already hoping for grandkids. Okay? I can feel myself being that way. I'm stoked. Let's go. Oh, no. There's a lot of really good wisdom in this article. I think the good wisdom in this article is that I think we live in a world, and this has been a growing thing, and I think we can all agree with it, where we live in a practical world in the sense that people care about outcome. They don't really care about how hard you work. No one's going to high five you because you got a 4.0 in your GPA and you worked super duper hard, and some smart ass kid that can just get 4.0s without working at all. Like, neither of you are going to somehow be seen. Like, you're not going to be seen better than the kid who could just walk through life and do it, right? When there's some objective measurement, if you're building software, if your software works and someone else's software works and they're roughly identical, no one's going to care that you put in twice the effort versus the other person. So we live in this kind of world of value is only the byproduct of production. And that's it. I don't know if our world could ever be different. I don't know if humans can be different. I'm not sure if there is a world that exists where we value how hard people work, and I'm not sure if valuing how hard people work is a good thing in and of itself either, right? It's kind of like one of these, I'm not trying to make some sort of objective statement that we live in a terrible world. I'm not sure if the world could be much different because this, it's a reoccurring theme that happens over and over again throughout history, that people just care more about outcomes than they do than the means to that outcome. But I think the better takeaway for all of this is that it's not that we live in a who cares era. I honestly think we live in an era of shortcuts. I think he fundamentally misunderstands this. I think we live in an era where people are information overloaded and they're just trying to find the fastest path to get what they need, the fastest path with the least amount of work. And this obviously leads to enshittification and all the fun stuff that we're used to. And so I don't think it's that people don't care. I really, truly don't think it's that people don't care. I think it's that people live in a world now where they're competing against more people than they've ever competed against for jobs, because now instead of it being like, hey, you live in Montana, there's these 3 tech companies. These are the companies that you're going to work at because those are the companies that are available, or you have to move somewhere else. And so the candidate pool that you're versing against is very, very small, where now we live in a very distributed world where I think it's just like, okay, there's a company that exists here, and now any person in the United States is going to be applying to it. So now one single opening now gets 10,000 resumes as opposed to the 15 people who showed up to the career fair. It's a much different competition landscape that I think we're living in. And it's not that people don't care. I think people are tired and they just want to try to maximize or get the most amount of surface area. And the way to get the most amount of surface area is to put in enough work into each one of those things that it can get to the point of being done enough. I don't look at people as who cares. I think people deeply care, right? I think it's the era of fast labor. I think it's just the era of trying to get into something. And so there's a lot more, okay, well, here's the problem. Let's just pretend there's 1,000 open positions for whatever job, front-end engineer, and there's 10,000 people that are applying for it. You think the person that's like handwriting every single essay and handing in everything handwritten, bespoke, very nice, is going to be able to remotely compete with the person that's going to auto-generate something to 1,000 of those positions? They're going to have their name out there 1,000 times. You may only get your name out there 3 times. All right, so it's not, in my head, I understand why these things happen. So then you can take the same mentality and apply it to anywhere at your job. You go work for a job and someone's producing mediocre code, but they're crushing out tickets 3 times as fast as you. What's going to happen? You're going to have to compete not by the nature of saying, hey, I'm actually producing really nice stuff. You're going to have to compete in the fact that all of your coworkers are trying to like effectively race to the bottom themselves saying, no, I'm actually doing enough work. And so now you have this weird notion of like this constant values driven overworking garbage stuff. And so it's just like, okay, you can just obviously see it's not that people don't care. It's that it's just this weird incentivized race that I'm not really sure how we got into that race to begin with. Anyways, that's like my personal viewpoint. By the way, again, YouTube tab crashing. Jeez, how'd that happen? Crazy, huh? Anyways, these are all just thoughts of mine. The thing that, the thing that just makes me sad here at the Who Cares era is that I think it just paints people as just kind of don't care automatons. I think people do care. I think people really do care. And I know a lot of you guys care, okay? So, hey, I appreciate you guys. Keep caring. The end. Yeah, I'm not a cynical person. You'll notice right away that I've never been a very cynical individual. I am not that guy, and nor can I be that guy. Again,